Hey everyone, welcome to Wildlife Inspired. I'm your host, Scott Keys. This is your channel for photography, for wildlife, and for wildlife photography. And today we're talking fluid heads. Did I just find a new permanent fluid head for myself? Well, this is the Leofoto FH-10. I'm going to compare it with a couple others and let you know why I think this might be my new everyday fluid head. Right after this. Now today we're talking about fluid heads, and for years I've been using a fluid head from Leofoto called the BV20. There's a couple of things I really liked about this fluid head, and in fact, I still really like it, but I'm not sure it's going to be my everyday fluid head from now on, and I'll tell you why in this video. The BV20 is very well made with a metal construction. It's got adjustable counterbalance. It's got adjustable drag controls. It's a flat base system, and it's ARCA compatible. All of that for around $400. And with Leofoto, I do get some discounts that I can make available for you. And with the 20% discount, you're gonna get that down to $320. And I'm telling you from a value perspective, you can't get a better value than that. But I also noticed they sold one for $449, right in the same price point. When I give you 20% off of that, it's gonna bring you down to about $360. And I thought, why do they have two fluid heads essentially in the same price point? And then I noticed some fundamental differences. So the BV20 is a flat-based system, meaning when you put this on your tripod, it's got to have a flat base. It's not adjustable, so you can't rotate and balance it out in the field. You have to use your tripod legs in order to get it balanced. With the FH-10, it's a little bit different. Now I've got a camera over here, so I'm going to show you some close-ups of what this looks like. The primary difference, and there's several differences, but one of the main differences is this is a half ball system that is designed to go into a bowl on a tripod. If your tripod does not have the ability to use a bowl, you can't use this system. It's not adjustable, you can't take it off, you can't change it. It's built as one piece. So when I got my hands on this, a couple things stood out to me. One, it was made a little bit differently than the BV20. It doesn't have the all-metal components that I felt on the BV20. This is made of a polycarbonate, but it is a very durable piece of material. One of the things I have to be very, very cautious with, and I have some personal biases, is when I feel metal, I always think it's stronger and better made. And many of my friends have pointed out that that is not necessarily the case. Some of these polycarbonate materials are actually stronger and lighter than their metal counterparts. So I'm always open-minded now whenever I get a piece. Don't judge it just because it doesn't feel like it's made of all metal. So the FH-10, it's got a half ball down here, but there was one other thing I noticed about this. It looked incredibly like another fluid head. And so I'm going to do a couple comparisons in this video. This is a fluid head made by Sachtler. And when I was looking at this on the websites, it looked really, really similar. It had similar adjustments. It had similar counterbalance. It had a similar design, had the same almost exact half ball system. And so I started to wonder, what are the differences in these two? And the truth is there aren't many. In fact, I'm going to take a minute. I'm going to spin you through the FH-10 and I'm going to show you several of the ways that this is almost identical to the Sachtler. The first, the handle is on one side. It's only on the right-hand side. You can't move it from side to side like you can with other fluid heads. We talked about that half ball. It's got a 3-step drag control at the bottom that does go down to a 0 or a frictionless. I'll show you that when I get it mounted into the tripod. Same on the vertical drag adjustment, only 3 stops, the exact same as the Sachtler, and it's not continuously variable. So in other words, it's going to lock in, it's going to click into each of these little controls. Now, in some ways that's a little nicer. You don't get the fine tune in between settings, but you can click it in and you know where that setting is from time to time. So when I was using this, I almost always had the drag control set on 1 because that was my preferred measurement. And when I got it on 1, I just kind of knew that's where I wanted it to be. It couldn't move, I couldn't bump it, I couldn't accidentally change it. The other parts that were similar were the lockouts. So this has a lockout, and I'll show you on this side. It's kind of like a thumb lockout where you can kind of push this down with your finger and push it up with your thumb, and it's a very quick lockout. On the bottom, there's another lockout, And again, it locks out real quickly and it pushes in real quickly. Both the Sachtler and the Leofoto FH-10 had the identical systems in those regards. Now there's one fundamental difference. This is ARCA compatible. So with most still photographers and most of my wildlife photographer friends, we are using ARCA systems. And sometimes our lens feet are designed with ARCA plates. This is an ARCA system. I'll show you the way this goes in. It kind of slides in like this. And now it's in, and there's a safety feature that holds that in place. So I could show you on the side here. You can see it's held in place. It's only about a half to a full turn to lock it out and then to unlock it. And when I want to release it, it's got this little safety mechanism, and I'll pull that out and I'll twist it out again. Okay, so that's the mechanism for that ARCA Swiss system on the FH-10. One of the key fundamental differences between that and the Sachtler is the Sachtler is a Manfrotto-based system. So this is a Manfrotto plate. This is a Manfrotto clamp. It goes in only one way, so it's going to slide in. So instead of twisting in like the Leofoto, it's going to lock out here. It does have built-in safety, so let me just loosen that up. So it's got a built-in safety, and then it also has a similar release mechanism. Now these release mechanisms operate a little bit differently because the clamping systems operate a little bit differently. That was honestly the major difference outside of two other factors. One was the country of origin. The Leofoto is made in China. The Sachtler is a German company, manufactured it in Costa Rica. For that, you pay literally 2 times as much. So the Sachtler is going to run you about $700. Now I got my hands on the Sachtler from B&H. I want to thank them. They've been my longtime affiliate partners. They basically get me all of the gear for these videos. The Leofoto, the FH-10, was given to me directly from Leofoto, another one of my affiliates that I work very closely with. So in essence, the Leofoto is a Sachtler-like product made in China. For that, you get to save about $350 on the purchase price. Now, I'm going to set these up because I want to show you some of the testing and what I was pleased with and what I wasn't pleased with. To be honest, there's almost nothing I wasn't pleased with, but I am going to put these on the tripod. I want to show you a couple of the features. I want to talk about the similarities and differences. And while I get this set up, I've got a quick clip.
Creating memories starts long before the camera comes out. I spend my time finding great locations with wonderful subjects that set my clients up for success. So when the moment happens, you're already in the right position. My offerings are truly small group workshops. No crowds, no rush. It's about slowing down and seeing through the subject. That's wildlife inspired.
So as I finish setting this up, I just want to make a couple points about this. This half ball system requires a bowl that is 75 millimeters. Now I use a set of legs from Leofoto called the 403CX. These are my favorite tripod legs. For the price point, they cannot be beaten. It does come with a 100 millimeter base up here. So because of that, I need an adapter to go from 100 to 75. They sell those, they're not very expensive. Because I have to test this one and I like it so much, the 75 millimeter bowl has to fit this. So I'm going to set this up real quick. I'll show you the handles down below. I mentioned the similarities in these. They are designed so similar that I have to check which handle goes to which fluid head because they look almost identical. In fact, I'm telling you, somewhere I think they're making these handles at the same company, but I can't be sure of that. They are that similar in design. All right, so these are both set up. Now, let me just put a chart over here that's going to show you some quick similarities. I'm going to add the BV20 into this chart for a reference, but notice the weight on these. These are actually lighter. They're bulkier than the BV20, but they are actually lighter. So when you look at the size, you could see that these are just slightly taller, and that's because of that half ball at the bottom. They are, however, lighter because of the materials used. The support, the BV20 is 33 pounds. These are listed at 17. Absolutely no problem. I think that's very conservative. I have no problem getting my setups on here. You know, again, 12 pounds to 14 pounds for my setups, no big deal. I mentioned the leveling bases. These both have these balls that level. So you could see I can adjust these. I didn't know that I was going to like this feature for a couple reasons. One, it doesn't allow me to ever go flat. So anytime you have this handle at the bottom, on these leveling bases. You can't lay your tripod flat, and I often like to do that. Then I realize I don't really do that when I'm doing video, and if I know I'm doing that, I will take another tripod and I will go ahead and use that BV20, but I rarely do that. And if I'm in a situation where I know I'm going to do it, I just take another set of tripod legs. For those people not worried about that feature, I will tell you, having this half ball has every other advantage, which means, let's say my tripod legs aren't quite perfectly horizontal, I can quickly adjust that. Now, both of these, I mentioned similarities, both of these have bubble levels and they are both lighted levels. So if I push this, it's gonna light up. I didn't think I'd really care about that, but man, I actually kind of enjoyed having that. At dusk, I was shooting some owls. I took this out in the field, by the way. I've been using it for a while now. I took it out in the field. I took a trip to Maryland. Let me show you some of the pictures that I got out there using this. And I even got some video. Now, I am not a great videographer, but I do like to do some nature shorts. And I find this, I just find it so easy and versatile. One thing about using a gimbal over a fluid head is it is not good for video. So while it's fine for still photography, a fluid head offers you the best of both worlds. You can use it for photography as long as it supports your weight, and it does a really great job with video. In fact, I will tell you, right now, I almost exclusively shoot with a fluid head. I rarely use my gimbal anymore. So that's just my personal preference. This one I really, really enjoyed. A couple other things. Mentioned drag control, and we'll talk about counterbalance. Those are big deals with fluid heads. This has 3 settings. I'm gonna put it on what we would call the frictionless. I'm gonna move this one out of the way. These behave almost identically. All right, so I can show it to you real quick. This is frictionless, means there's no drag on that. Not all systems are frictionless. So for example, the BV20 always has some resistance. If I take the Sachtler over here and I do the same thing, you're gonna see the same thing, frictionless. The counterbalance, or I'm sorry, let's go to the vertical drag. So this is set at 0. It means there's very little drag up and down. So there's no resistance. The resistance you're seeing is the counterbalance. And the counterbalance is that system that wants to even it out. I'm gonna put my lens on here in just a second and show you. Counterbalance settings are a little different. This has up to 8 settings on counterbalance, and the Sachtler has 9 settings, one of them being a 0. And 0 means there's no counterbalance at all. So most people want some counterbalance. I'm gonna put this both on 0. With no counterbalance, the Sachtler will actually just fall. The Leofoto does not have that ability. It always has some counterbalance built into the system. Very, very, very minor difference. But again, there's that frictionless ability on its drag control, its horizontal drag control. A couple other things about this. We talked about the Arca Swiss compatibility. We talked about the handles. And then I do want to mention this idea of creep. As I put my camera on here, I'm going to show you an experiment with creep. Now, creep is when we get locked in on a subject and then we lock out these vertical and horizontal settings. Most people would like that creep to be 0, meaning when they lock it out, the lens doesn't move. But lenses do move whether you're using a gimbal or a fluid head. Look at the creep on this one. As I lock out the horizontal, you can see there is absolutely no creep. And this is where you typically get creep. On the BV20, I used to get the slightest inclination of creep. I did a video that compared the BV20 and the BV15, and it showed that the BV15 did have some creep. The BV20 had just a hair, almost none. Both the Sachtler and the Leofoto FH-10 have 0 creep in any direction. So, just for those that are really careful about, or cautious about that, I don't have a huge concern about creep on my lenses as long as it's reasonable, and this certainly was. Now I'm gonna drop this down a little bit just so we can get a little better image onto the camera. And I just wanna show you how smooth this is. When I was out in the field using this, really, really smooth. So I've got my camera on here. Again, I'm gonna make one final balance. So this is that ball head. I'm gonna make sure it's, or I said ball head, that half ball. And then I'm gonna loosen this up, and I'm just gonna see how the balance is. So I wanna make sure this is balanced pretty well forward and backwards. So I've got no resistance on this right now. Now I'm gonna put some drag on here. So I'm gonna step that down to a drag of 1. I'm going to set the counterbalance on this. I normally set this around 3 on my lens. All lenses will be different. And I'll take a look at where it's at. The idea is for this to hold in place. And you can see that it is. If I turn the counterbalance up too much, it will actually start to pull it back down. So you're going to notice the lens will slowly start to retrieve or retreat back into its original position. You see that? So you're better off having too much counterbalance than too little. Too little counterbalance will actually allow, and I gotta be careful. I'm always afraid I'm gonna do this live on camera and mess up. See how it allows the lens, you don't ever want your lens to flop. This can be a problem because the whole tripod could fall if you have a really heavy setup. Not ideal. So this one does have the adjustments, and somewhere between this 3 and 4 setting, when I was out in the field, felt just about right. If you set it perfectly, it may even hold its position. I think I can get this to hold. You could see it creeping back a little bit. That means I need just one more stop of counterbalance. And so it's going to get me right in that range. So you can see it's starting to creep back up a little bit. Now I don't have any tension on this lockout. If I put even a little bit of tension on this lockout and it's close, it'll stop that from happening. So it will hold in position when I need it. Very, very smooth. I'm going to put both of these on 1, which was the setting I like to use out in the field. This is the horizontal panning. Let me adjust that. There we go. This is the horizontal panning, very smooth, and the vertical panning, extremely smooth. So you could see that. Really, 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 really nice. One of the things I noticed, there's a test that I use on fluid heads, and it's a quick stop and release. So at this little moment where I catch and go, right here, that change in direction, lesser made fluid heads will give you a little kick right there. I want to say they actually call it stiction, which just sounds like a made-up word to me, but I was told that that's what they called it. But it's this little grab that you'll get. This has absolutely none of it. And I'm telling you, I'm going to put the BV20 on here to show you the difference. There's absolutely none of that. This is very, very, very smooth. So in terms of smoothness, it is as smooth as this Sachtler. I had my significant other do this experiment where I put the lens on both. I had her go back and forth, and when the settings were matched, they could not tell the difference. They absolutely could not tell the difference. Now I'm gonna pause the video for a second. I'm gonna put this camera, I've already showed you how smooth this is. I'm gonna put this camera on the BV20 over here, and I'm just gonna show you a slight difference. It's ever so slight, but I wanna try to give you the best review on this possible. So give me 1 second. As a pro tip, I wanna show you this. Rather than cut the video, I'm just going to loosen this plate up. This is my 100mm base. Let me take my lens off here. I'm gonna make a video one day, and I swear I'm gonna drop a lens live on camera. I'll put this over here. One of the tips I do is just, I instead of changing the heads, I actually change the base. So this base will pop out. There's a little safety latch on here. Again, this is the Leofoto 403. For reference, this is the Robus. This one is really, really nice. I'll put a link down there if you're interested, but this one is the 8880. It gets really, really tall. I was shooting in the field and I saw 3 people shooting off of Robus tripod legs. And I thought, good choice. Robus makes really nice tripod legs at an affordable price. I leave the bases right on here. So yes, you might have to spend a couple dollars to get a few of these extra bases, but rather than unscrew the head and screw the head and take that bowl, no, just the whole thing. So this just snaps in. I don't want to make it have too much noise. Okay. And then I'm just going to tighten that up. And I've changed the head in like 15 seconds. This is the BV20. And when I mentioned that little change in direction, now first of all, I can't balance this because it's flat based. So I have to now get it right with the legs. Whereas before I could just do it with that half bowl. Very, very convenient out in the field. Especially if you've moved your tripod a little bit, you can easily balance it back out. I did that about 20 times. I was out in the field shooting, and I would kind of move my tripod a little bit here and there to get a better angle depending on where I was shooting owls one day, depending on where they would pop up randomly from. Here's that little bit of difference. So when I do this test right here, there's just this little It is almost imperceptible, but I did it so many times right here. It's so small. There's just this tiniest little catch. And let me tighten this up. I don't think you're going to be able to see it on the camera, so you got to take my word for it. I'll put a little bit of drag on here. This has a variable control drag, by the way, so it doesn't click in. I mentioned that there's pros and cons to this. The variable is nice because you can get it exactly where you want it, but you never know where it is until you start using it because there's no numbers there to tell you. So when I put some drag on here, there it is. And I change directions. There's just this hint. When you go back and forth like this, there's just a hint that it's catching. So I have used this BV20 for a long time. I like it. I would absolutely recommend it. I'm not going to tell you this is a bad in any way, shape, or form. I will tell you, if you've got the ability to use a half ball and if you can get a bowl with a half ball, it's probably going to be easier overall. You can adjust it and balance it very, very simply. You can't flatten it out all the way. The advantage of this one is if for any reason you had to drop it down to the ground, you could drop it down all the way. They do, by the way, make leveling bases that you can put on top. They're sold separately, but you can do that. It'll raise your camera up a little bit more. It adds another piece into the system, but you can get a leveling base that does not have that handle at the bottom. But the handle is by far the most convenient way that I've ever used to adjust these. So let me just wrap this up with some final thoughts on what this FH-10 really is and what it excels at. Now, if I was going to list pros and cons for the FH-10, I will tell you the number one pro to me is probably the most important. That's performance. It worked really, really well. I have been very, very happy with that BV20. I can tell you this outperforms it by a hair. It's built very, very well. It's a smart design. It's very easy to use. It's got some safety features built in here. Little details like that lit bubble in the back. The adjustments are dead on. The counterbalance is fine. So it supports the weight I need. So it really makes a lot of sense. There is almost nothing that I can find at fault with this. If I was to nitpick, it's more around personal preference. So the personal preference thing is, one, the handle's only on one side. Now, that is, a lot of fluid heads are built like that. I like it in my left hand because my right hand is using the shutter. So with photographers, I notice a lot of people do like it on the left side. You could see when I did this, I actually tilted the handle back toward my left hand, and that helped me out a little bit. Little nitpicky, but if there's anything that I found that I didn't like about it, that's probably it. Not all metal construction. I probably would have liked to seen the entire top plate be a metal construction. The only metal that I could really see besides some of the stainless screws was this little piece that holds it in. This does appear to be metal, but the rest, almost the whole thing, seems to be polycarbonate. Again, it's not bad. Polycarbonate is not a bad product. In fact, in many cases, it is lighter and stronger than comparable metals. However, there's a perception that metal is better, and so manufacturers will often put some metal accents on here. I think I probably would have liked that. The only other con I can think of is country of origin. So if that matters to you, this one's made in China. I showed you that Sachtler's made in Costa Rica, a German company, but it's half the price. And at the end of the day, that's a decision for you to make. Are you willing to pay 2 times as much for a product that's not made in China? So I'll let you make that decision. Again, I want to thank Leofoto for sending me the FH-10. I want to thank B&H for sending me that Sachtler. By the way, if you're using a Manfrotto system, I can tell you that works really well. I did test that out and try it, but I did not test it nearly as much as the Leofoto. The Leofoto I had out in the field for a long time, and I can absolutely give you a thumbs up. If you want that adjustability, if you want that ball head that you can adjust out in the field and quickly keep your horizontal plane, that is really, really nice. If you can live without being able to drop it down on the ground, you know, if you need that, think of another option. But I didn't have any problems, and I don't find myself really going down all the way to the ground all the time. unless I know exactly what I'm going to be shooting, and in those cases I just use a different setup. So that's my video for you today. Hope you enjoyed this review. Let me know down in the comments, do you have any questions, and have my reviews in the past been helpful to you? I think I'm going to be able to spend a little bit more time on reviews. I'm going to try to get you 2 to 3 reviews a month going forward. So hopefully you appreciate that. If you have any feedback for me, let me know down in the comments. Thanks for tuning in today. And as always, I hope we can continue to find inspiration in wildlife together.